The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the usual mixture of translated languages and electromagnetic frequencies that served as communication among the 47 member species. Ambassador Zethkar of the Hegemony leaned forward on his forearms, his crystalline eyes reflecting the holographic display showing Earth's blue marble spinning slowly in space. "These humans," he began, his translator rendering his clicks and whistles into standard galactic, "are perhaps the most awkward species we have ever encountered." A ripple of agreement passed through the assembled delegates. The Vorthak representative, a being resembling a giant mantis, nodded its triangular head. Their social interactions are chaotic. They say one thing but mean another. They fight among themselves constantly, yet somehow manage to cooperate on projects that span their entire planet. Commander Wylix of the Stellar Dominion, whose people had been observing humanity for decades, activated another hologram. Images flashed across the chamber showing humans in various activities, stumbling over words during diplomatic meetings, making awkward jokes at inappropriate times, getting emotional during negotiations, and displaying what seemed like random acts of kindness to strangers. "Look at this footage from their United Nations," Yillik said, manipulating the display. "Their delegates spend more time arguing about proper pronunciation of each other's names than discussing actual policy. Half of them seem to be on the verge of panic attacks when speaking publicly." The assembled aliens watched as human diplomats fumbled with papers, dropped microphones, and stuttered through presentations. One particularly cringe-worthy clip showed a human ambassador accidentally walking into a glass door while trying to make a dramatic exit. "They are clumsy in both body and mind," declared Thaxmore of the Binary Collective, his electronic voice crackling with disdain. "Their military tactics are predictable. Their technology is primitive. Their social structure is barely organized chaos." Ambassador Zethkar pulled up military assessment files. "Our intelligence suggests their armed forces are equally awkward. They have something called friendly fire incidents where they accidentally shoot their own soldiers. Their equipment breaks down constantly. They argue with their superiors and question orders in the middle of combat." The chamber filled with what passed for laughter among the various species present. The idea of soldiers questioning orders was particularly amusing to races that operated on strict hierarchical programming. "There is one curious thing," interjected science advisor Keftal, whose tentacles writhed nervously as she spoke. "Despite all their social awkwardness and military incompetence, they have survived every natural disaster their planet has thrown at them. Ice ages, asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions, plagues. Each time their population bounces back stronger. Luck," dismissed Commander Ilix with a wave of his six-fingered hand. "Pure statistical probability. Given enough random chance, even the most incompetent species occasionally survives." The conversation turned to the real matter at hand. Earth sat in a strategically valuable position, controlling access to 3 important hyperspace routes. The humans didn't even realize the significance of their location. They were still using primitive chemical rockets and had barely established permanent bases on their own moon. "The Hegemony has decided," announced Zethkar, his voice carrying the weight of official declaration. "Earth will be incorporated into our territory. The humans will be relocated to a suitable farming world where their social awkwardness will not interfere with important galactic affairs." "What of their governments?" asked the Vorthak delegate. "Surely they will object." "We will offer them the standard choice," Zethkar replied. "Peaceful relocation with compensation, or military enforcement of galactic law. Given their awkward nature and primitive military, we expect they will choose wisely." The decision was made with typical bureaucratic efficiency. Forms were filed, territorial claims were registered, and the invasion fleet was allocated. It would be a simple police action, more of an eviction notice than actual warfare. 3 months later, the first contact team landed outside the United Nations building in New York. The humans, predictably, had gathered a crowd of onlookers who seemed more interested in taking pictures with their primitive devices than showing proper respect for galactic authority. The human Secretary General, a nervous-looking woman who kept adjusting her glasses, met them in the assembly hall. She had brought what appeared to be their entire leadership council, though half of them seemed to be whispering among themselves and passing notes like children. "Welcome to Earth," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "I am Secretary General Martinez. We are honored by your visit. Ambassador Zethkar found the humans' obvious anxiety both pathetic and somewhat endearing. It reminded him of the small creatures his own people kept as pets. We bring greetings from the Galactic Council, he began, activating his translator, and an offer of relocation to a world better suited to your species' needs. The humans exchanged glances. Several of them seemed to be having trouble processing the information. One delegate raised his hand as if he were in a classroom. Excuse me, but when you say relocation, do you mean all of us? Naturally. Earth has been designated for strategic use by more advanced civilizations. You will be compensated fairly and provided with transportation to your new world. The awkward silence that followed was exactly what the aliens had expected. The humans looked confused, scared, and completely out of their depth. Some were frantically typing on small devices. Others were whispering urgent conversations into communication equipment. Secretary General Martinez cleared her throat. And if we decline this generous offer, then galactic law must be enforced, Zethkar replied matter-of-factly. Our military forces will ensure compliance. However, we anticipate no difficulties. Your people seem reasonable, if awkward. What happened next surprised no one on the alien delegation. The humans asked for time to consider. They requested detailed information about the relocation world. They wanted to know about compensation packages and transportation schedules. They even asked about bringing pets. It was all very predictable and awkward. What the aliens didn't see were the encrypted communications being sent to every military base on the planet. They didn't notice the seemingly nervous delegates were actually taking detailed scans of alien technology with devices hidden in their clothing. They didn't realize that the children passing notes were actually seasoned intelligence officers coordinating a global response. The humans had been awkward, all right. Awkward like foxes. Staff Sergeant Elena Vasquez crouched behind a concrete barrier in what used to be Central Park, watching alien patrol craft drift lazily overhead. The invasion had begun 3 days ago, and the aliens seemed almost bored by the entire operation. Their forces moved with mechanical precision, setting up checkpoints and processing centers with the casual efficiency of beings who had done this countless times before. The initial human response had been exactly what the aliens expected: confusion, panic, and scattered resistance that their superior technology easily overwhelmed. News broadcasts showed the same scenes playing out across the globe. Alien ships hovering over major cities, governments issuing statements calling for calm, and military forces being systematically neutralized by weapons that seemed centuries ahead of anything humanity possessed. Elena adjusted her grip on her rifle and spoke quietly into her throat mic. Overwatch, this is Hammer 6. Patrol pattern Alpha 7 just passed my position. They're maintaining the same lazy search grid they've used since day one. The voice that crackled back belonged to General Patricia Hayes, speaking from a bunker somewhere beneath Colorado Springs. Copy, Hammer 6. Intelligence confirms they're treating this as a routine pacification operation. Minimum force, maximum efficiency. They want us intact for relocation. Their mistake, Elena muttered. She had been watching the aliens for 3 days now, and what she saw wasn't an unstoppable military force. It was a bureaucracy with weapons. The alien soldiers moved in predictable patterns, followed strict protocols, and seemed incapable of adapting when those protocols were challenged. More importantly, they were complacent. Every transmission intercepted by human intelligence suggested the aliens viewed this as a minor administrative action. They had faced no serious resistance from humanity so far, just the expected awkward fumbling of a primitive species. Elena's mission was to change that perception. Hammer 6 to all stations, she whispered. Execute Operation Awkward in 3, 2, 1. Across the globe, thousands of small unit actions began simultaneously. Not the grand battles the aliens expected from a desperate species, but something much more frustrating: humanity's greatest strength disguised as their greatest weakness. In Tokyo, a squad of Japanese self-defense force soldiers approached an alien checkpoint, arguing loudly among themselves in what appeared to be a breakdown of military discipline. The alien guards watched with the patient resignation of beings who had seen this same scene play out on dozens of worlds. Primitive soldiers panicking, losing cohesion, becoming easy to manage. They didn't notice the arguing soldiers were actually coordinating targeting solutions in coded language developed by Yakuza enforcers. When the smoke grenades went off, half the checkpoint was eliminated before the aliens realized they were under attack. In Berlin, a group of German engineers approached an alien communication array, carrying what looked like primitive surveying equipment and speaking in the universal language of confused bureaucrats. They gestured helplessly at clipboards, pointed in different directions, and generally acted like local officials who had gotten lost. The alien technicians initially ignored them, then tried to wave them away, then finally decided to escort them back to the nearest human processing center. They never suspected the surveying equipment was actually military-grade signal jamming gear, or that the confused bureaucrats were GSG-9 operators who had spent years perfecting the art of looking harmless. By the time the aliens realized their communications had been severed, the facility was already in human hands. Elena watched her own target approach, an alien patrol of 3 soldiers moving through the park in their standard triangular formation. They moved with the confidence of beings whose technology made them effectively invulnerable to anything humanity could throw at them. She stepped out from behind cover, stumbling slightly, and raising her hands in what appeared to be surrender. "Please," she called out in accented English, deliberately mispronouncing several words.
"I am lost."
"My family, they are at processing center, but I cannot find." The aliens stopped, their leader making what Elena's intelligence briefing had identified as a gesture of mild annoyance. Through their translator, she could hear him speaking to his subordinates. Another confused primitive. "Standard Protocol 7. Escort to nearest collection point." They approached her with casual indifference, weapons lowered but ready. The classic mistake of an occupying force that had faced no real resistance. Elena continued her performance, babbling about her children and gesturing wildly in the wrong direction. She tripped over her own feet, dropped the small bag she was carrying, and generally acted like every stereotype the aliens had formed about awkward humanity. When the lead alien reached down to help her up, she grabbed his weapon hand with a grip strengthened by years of combat training and twisted until she heard the satisfying crack of alien bones breaking. Her other hand drew the combat knife from her boot and opened his throat in one smooth motion. The alien's 2 companions were fast, but Elena had been expecting that. She rolled behind the dying alien's body, using it as cover while she drew her sidearm. The alien's energy weapons were powerful but required line of sight. Human weapons worked just fine around corners. She put 3 rounds center mass into each alien, watching their supposedly superior armor fail against simple kinetic energy applied at close range. The engagement lasted less than 15 seconds from start to finish. Overwatch Hammer 6. 3 tangos down. Proceeding to extraction point Alpha. Copy Hammer 6. How'd they react? Elena smiled grimly as she gathered the alien weapons. Like they were dealing with another awkward human right up until they weren't. Similar reports were coming in from teams around the world. The aliens weren't prepared for humans who could act like bumbling amateurs right up until the moment they became lethal professionals. Their intelligence files were full of observations about human social awkwardness, military incompetence, and emotional instability. What those files missed was that humans had learned to weaponize their own perceived weaknesses. Elena made her way through the park, moving with the practiced stealth of a Marine who had survived 3 combat deployments. Behind her, alien sirens began wailing as the bodies were discovered. Soon the entire occupation force would know that something had changed. The awkward humans were fighting back. Commander Ilek stared at the tactical display in growing disbelief. Red warning indicators flashed across a 3-dimensional map of Earth, each one representing a failed alien outpost, destroyed communication array, or eliminated patrol. What had started as isolated incidents 6 hours ago had become a global pattern of coordinated resistance. "Explain this," he demanded, his 6-fingered hands clenching the edges of the command console. "These humans are supposed to be primitives, socially awkward, militarily incompetent." Science advisor Keftel's tentacles writhed nervously as she manipulated the holographic data. "Sir, the pattern suggests a level of coordination we didn't expect. These aren't random acts of desperation. Each strike was perfectly timed to maximize damage while minimizing alien response capability." "Impossible," declared Intelligence Chief Vorthak, his mandibles clicking in agitation. "Our behavioral analysis is comprehensive. We observed them for decades. They stumble through diplomatic meetings. They accidentally shoot their own soldiers. They argue with their commanders during combat." The tactical display zoomed in on North America, showing Elena's position as a small blue dot moving through Manhattan's rubble-strewn streets. Around her, the positions of other human units appeared as they reported in, creating a web of resistance that stretched across the continent. "Focus on this one," Ilex ordered, highlighting Elena's signal. "Unit designation Hammer 6. She eliminated 3 of our soldiers in direct combat, then proceeded to disable 2 more patrols using captured equipment." The display showed Elena's movement pattern over the past 6 hours. She had struck at the alien checkpoint in Central Park, disappeared into the subway system, emerged near the Hudson River to ambush a supply convoy, then vanished again before orbital scanners could lock onto her position. "Sir," reported Communications Officer Zeltar, "we're receiving similar reports from all sectors. The humans are using our own tactical doctrine against us. They study our patrol patterns, identify our weak points, then strike with precision that suggests advanced military training." "But they're awkward," insisted Vorthok. "Look at this footage from their initial surrender negotiations." The display showed Secretary General Martinez and her delegation, stumbling over words, dropping papers, and generally appearing completely overwhelmed by first contact. Several delegates seemed on the verge of panic attacks. Keftal's tentacles suddenly went rigid, a sign of realization among her species. "Commander, what if we've been misinterpreting their behavior?" "Explain." "We assumed their social awkwardness indicated incompetence. But what if it's actually a form of camouflage? What if they've evolved to appear harmless while gathering intelligence?" Ilex studied the footage more carefully. Now that Keftal mentioned it, he could see subtle signs he had missed before. The delegate who appeared to be having a panic attack was actually scanning their technology with hidden sensors. The papers that kept being dropped were positioned to photograph alien equipment from different angles. "Show me the throat mic." "Incident," he ordered. The display replayed a moment from the first day when a human delegate had seemed to accidentally activate his communication device, creating feedback that disrupted the meeting for several minutes. At the time, it had seemed like typical human technological incompetence. "Enhance audio frequencies outside human hearing range," Keftal suggested. The computer complied, revealing high-frequency transmissions hidden beneath the apparent malfunction. Data streams that had been dismissed as electronic noise were actually detailed intelligence reports being broadcast to human military units worldwide. They were spying on us, Ilex realized. From the very first moment of contact, the implications were staggering. Every awkward moment, every embarrassing fumble, every apparent sign of human incompetence had been carefully calculated to make the aliens underestimate them. While the Galactic Council had been laughing at human social awkwardness, humanity had been studying alien technology, tactics, and psychology. "Sir, incoming priority transmission from Admiral Zethkar," announced the communications officer. The Admiral's image appeared, his crystalline eyes reflecting obvious frustration. "Commander Willix, explain why a primitive species has managed to eliminate 18% of our occupation force in less than 12 hours. "Sir, I believe we have severely underestimated human capabilities. Their apparent social awkwardness may be a sophisticated deception tactic designed to—" "Nonsense," Zethkar interrupted. "I've seen the behavioral reports. These creatures can barely conduct a coherent conversation. Deploy additional forces and crush this resistance before it spreads. Admiral, with respect, I recommend we reconsider our approach. The humans are demonstrating tactical sophistication that suggests your recommendation is noted and rejected, Commander. You have 48 hours to restore order. If you cannot handle a species that stumbles over its own words, perhaps the hegemony needs new field commanders." The transmission ended, leaving Ilex staring at the tactical display where red warning indicators continued to multiply. In the past hour alone, human resistance cells had struck at 12 more targets across 3 continents. "Sir," reported Zeltar, "we're intercepting human communications. They're calling this operation Awkward Vengeance. Put it through the translators." Elena's voice filled the command center, speaking over an encrypted channel to other resistance leaders. "Phoenix Base, this is Hammer 6. Package delivered to Target 7. Aliens are still treating this like a police action. They're not adapting to asymmetric warfare." Another voice responded, carrying the calm authority of professional military leadership. "Copy, Hammer 6. Intelligence indicates enemy command is requesting reinforcements rather than changing tactics. They still think they're fighting the humans they observed during diplomatic meetings. Their loss, Elena replied. Moving to Target 8. These aliens might have better technology, but they've never fought anyone who could lie with their entire body language. Keftal's tentacles curled in what passed for a smile among her species. Commander, I believe we've encountered something unprecedented in galactic history. Which is? A species that has evolved social deception as a survival trait. They don't just lie with words, they lie with their entire presence. Every gesture, every expression, every apparent emotion can be consciously controlled to create whatever impression serves their purposes. Wheelix watched the tactical display update with fresh intelligence. Human forces weren't just fighting, they were teaching each other as they fought. Knowledge gained from one encounter was immediately shared across their entire resistance network. They were adapting faster than the aliens could respond. How many species in the galaxy possess this capability? He asked. None, Keftal replied. Most intelligent species evolved in environments where deception carried greater cost than benefits. Humans appear to have evolved in conditions where the ability to mislead predators, prey, and competitors was essential for survival. On the tactical display, Elena had reached her next target, an alien supply depot that was supposedly protected by advanced security systems. The sensors showed her approaching the perimeter, then stopping to adjust her equipment in what appeared to be nervous preparation. Alex zoomed in on her position, watching as she deliberately made herself visible to the alien guards. She stumbled as she approached, dropping her weapon and raising her hands in apparent surrender. Even knowing what he was looking for, Alex could see nothing that suggested this wasn't exactly what it appeared to be. Another frightened human seeking safety. The alien guards approached with casual indifference, following standard protocols for handling surrendering primitives. Elena waited until they were close enough to touch before she revealed exactly how awkward humans could really be. Elena slid through the maintenance tunnel beneath the alien command center, her movements silent despite the cramped conditions. 3 days of continuous operations had taught her more about alien psychology than humanity's xenobiologists had learned in decades of speculation. The invaders were predictable in their superiority complex, following protocols designed for species that fought conventionally. Above her, she could hear the harmonized clicking and whistling that passed for conversation among the hegemony forces. Her translation software, jury-rigged from captured alien equipment, provided a running commentary on their discussion. Sector 7 reports another supply convoy destroyed. One voice was saying, "The humans used the same tactic as Sector 12. Feigned surrender, close quarters engagement, immediate dispersal." "Pattern recognition suggests coordination," replied another. "Yet intelligence maintains these creatures lack sophisticated command structures." Elena smiled grimly. The aliens kept trying to analyze human behavior through the lens of their own rigid hierarchies. They couldn't comprehend how humans could coordinate effectively without formal command structures. How a Marine staff sergeant could take initiative that reshaped an entire battle plan. Her earpiece crackled with an encrypted transmission from General Hayes. "Hammer 6, we've got movement on orbital sensors. The aliens are bringing in what looks like their heavy response units." "About time," Elena whispered back. "How heavy are we talking?" "Preliminary assessment suggests mechanized armor with enhanced firepower. They're finally taking us seriously." Elena reached the access point directly beneath the alien command center and began carefully removing the metal grate. Through intelligence intercepts, they knew this facility controlled orbital bombardment systems for the entire eastern seaboard. Taking it offline would prevent the aliens from simply leveling human cities out of frustration. "General, what's our extraction timeline looking like?" "That's complicated," Hayes replied. "Elena, we need you to stay in position. Intelligence has identified something that changes everything." Elena paused in her work. In 3 days of operations, she had never heard that particular tone from Hayes. "Sir, we've been monitoring alien communications across all frequencies. They're not just occupying Earth, they're using it as a staging ground for something bigger. There are references to a primary directive and the ancient enemy returning. The grate came free, and Elena lowered herself into the command center's lower level. Emergency lighting cast strange shadows across walls covered in alien symbols that seemed to shift when viewed peripherally. "Keep talking, General." "What ancient enemy?" "That's what we need to find out." The linguistic analysis team believes the aliens aren't conquerors, they're refugees. Something scared them out of their home territories and they're desperately searching for defensible positions. Elena began placing shaped charges at strategic points along the facility's power grid. The aliens had built their command centers to withstand orbital bombardment from above, but they hadn't considered attacks from below. Human military doctrine had always emphasized exploiting enemy assumptions. So Earth isn't valuable because of its location, she realized. It's valuable because it's isolated, far from whatever they're running from. Exactly. And Elena, there's something else. We've detected anomalies in deep space, ships moving toward our solar system using technology that's making the aliens panic. Whatever scared the hegemony is coming this way. Elena finished placing her charges and began moving toward the command center's data cores. The aliens stored their information in crystalline matrices that human computers couldn't decode. But they didn't need to decode them. They just needed to copy them. How long do we have? Unknown. Could be months, could be years. But Elena, if we're going to survive what's coming, we need allies, even awkward ones. The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. Everything they had been fighting for, Earth's independence, humanity's right to self-determination, might be irrelevant compared to what was approaching from deep space. She reached the data storage area and began connecting her portable drives to the alien systems. The technology was centuries ahead of anything humanity possessed, but it still followed basic principles of information storage and retrieval. General, are you suggesting we negotiate with these bastards? I'm suggesting we might need each other more than either side realizes. Elena's equipment beeped softly as it finished copying the alien databases. Terabytes of information flowed into human storage systems. Star charts, weapon specifications, tactical analyses, and hopefully answers about what was coming. Hammer 6. This is Phoenix Base, a new voice interrupted. We're detecting massive energy signatures approaching your position. The aliens are moving heavy units toward your location. Elena checked her timer. The shaped charges would detonate in 6 minutes, destroying the command center and crippling alien operations across half the continent. But if Hayes was right about the approaching threat, they might be sabotaging their own future protection. General, I need immediate clarification. Are we proceeding with the mission or are we looking for a diplomatic solution? Elena, I'm going to ask you to do something that goes against every instinct you have as a Marine. Sir, I need you to get captured. Elena stared at the alien command center around her, weighing her options. The charges were set, the data was copied, and her extraction route was clear. But if humanity was going to survive whatever was coming, they needed to understand it. Explain the plan, sir. We need someone inside their command structure when the real enemy arrives. Someone who understands both human and alien capabilities. Someone who can make the argument that we're stronger together than apart? Elena laughed quietly. You want me to convince a species that considers us awkward primitives to accept us as military partners? Elena, in the past 3 days you've demonstrated capabilities they didn't know humans possessed. You've forced them to reconsider every assumption about our species. If anyone can make them listen, it's you. She looked at the timer counting down to detonation, 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Enough time to escape or enough time to make a very different kind of statement. General, there's something you should know. I've been observing these aliens and they're not as confident as they pretend to be. They're scared. They're following protocols because improvisation makes them nervous. That's useful intelligence. It's more than that. Fear makes people, even alien people, make bad decisions. If we can convince them that cooperation serves their survival, they might actually listen. Elena made her decision. Instead of heading for the exit, she walked to the command center's main display and began interfacing with the alien systems. If she was going to get captured, she might as well make it spectacular. Phoenix Base, this is Hammer 6.
Change of plans.
I'm going to have a conversation with our alien friends. If this works, we might just solve 2 problems at once. She disabled her own charges and activated the facility's general alarm. Within seconds, alien security forces would converge on her position. But instead of finding another awkward human stumbling into captivity, they would find someone who had valuable information about the threat approaching from deep space. Elena sat down in what appeared to be the facility commander's chair and waited. When the aliens arrived, they would face a choice: treat her as an enemy to be eliminated, or recognize her as a potential ally in the war that was coming. Either way, Humanity's reputation for awkwardness was about to be permanently redefined. The alien security forces that burst into the command center stopped dead when they saw Elena sitting calmly in Commander Ilix's chair, her hands folded and her weapon placed deliberately on the desk beside her. She had arranged herself to appear non-threatening while simultaneously demonstrating that she could have destroyed the entire facility if she had chosen to do so. "Good morning," she said pleasantly, activating the universal translator. "I believe we need to talk." The lead security officer, a hegemony warrior whose carapace bore the scars of multiple campaigns, raised his energy weapon but didn't fire. Behind him, a dozen other aliens maintained perimeter security while their leader tried to process the situation. "Human, you are in violation of 17 different codes of military conduct, 3 treaties governing the treatment of occupied territories, and at least 1 law about unauthorized use of command facilities," Elena interrupted smoothly. "I know. I've been studying your legal framework for the past hour." She gestured to the alien computer systems around her, where holographic displays showed evidence of her activities. Instead of destroying the command center, she had spent the time learning everything she could about hegemony command structure, military doctrine, and legal precedents. "You have been accessing classified information," the security chief accused. "I've been doing my homework," Elena corrected, "because I have information you need, and I want to make sure I present it to the right authority level." The security team exchanged glances, their body language revealing confusion and uncertainty. This wasn't covered in any protocol for dealing with primitive species. Captured enemies were supposed to be either defiant or terrified, not sitting calmly in command chairs offering to share information. "What information?" the security chief demanded. Elena smiled and reached slowly for the data storage device she had used to copy the alien databases. Every alien weapon in the room tracked her movement, but she maintained her calm demeanor. "Information about why your people are really here," she said, "and about what's coming to kill all of us if we don't figure out how to work together." The security chief's mandibles clicked, and what Elena had learned was a sign of extreme agitation. "Explain." "I'd prefer to explain to someone with actual decision-making authority. No offense to your professional capabilities, but this conversation needs to happen at the command level, within minutes." Elena found herself escorted to a detention facility that was clearly designed for beings much more exotic than humans. The cell was a spherical chamber with artificial gravity oriented in multiple directions, presumably to accommodate species with different concepts of up and down. She made herself comfortable on what appeared to be a resting platform and waited. Commander Ilix arrived 3 hours later, accompanied by science advisor Keftal and what Elena assumed was a senior intelligence officer. They entered the cell with the wary respect accorded to an unexploded ordnance. "Staff Sergeant Elena Vasquez," Ilix began, consulting a holographic display. "Human military designation. Responsible for the elimination of 43 hegemony personnel and the destruction of 18 strategic installations." 47 personnel, Elena corrected. "Your casualty reports missed the supply depot incident from yesterday. And I prefer to think of it as aggressive negotiation rather than elimination." Keftal's tentacles writhed in what Elena had learned was amusement. "Commander, I believe we are dealing with the species' capacity for strategic deception again." "What do you want?" Ilix asked bluntly. Elena activated her own portable holographic projector, displaying the deep space sensor data that General Hayes had transmitted to her. The image showed distant objects moving through hyperspace using propulsion signatures that made even advanced alien technology look primitive. "I want to discuss our mutual survival problem," she said, "because in approximately 18 months, something is going to arrive in this solar system that's going to make our current conflict look like a minor disagreement between friends." The aliens studied the sensor data with obvious alarm. Elena could see their professional assessment protocols engaging as they analyzed threat vectors, technological capabilities, and tactical implications. "Where did you acquire this information?" the intelligence officer demanded. "We've been monitoring deep space communications for decades," Elena lied smoothly. "Just because we seem socially awkward doesn't mean we're technologically incompetent. We've known about the galactic community for a long time. We've also known about what drove you out of your home territories." Ilix leaned forward, his crystalline eyes reflecting the holographic display. "You know about the Devourers?" Elena felt a chill run down her spine at the name, but she maintained her composed expression. We know they consume entire civilizations. We know they've been expanding across the galaxy for millennia, and we know that every species they encounter faces the same choice: fight together or die separately. Impossible, the intelligence officer declared. Human technology is centuries behind hegemony capabilities. You cannot possibly have the sensor range to detect movements at that distance. Elena smiled. You're right. We can't detect them directly, but we can detect you. And your people have been running scared for decades, looking for isolated systems where you could establish defensive positions. Earth isn't valuable because of its resources. It's valuable because it's at the edge of explored space, as far from the Devourer expansion as you could get. The silence that followed was filled with the subtle harmonics of alien communication systems as the three officers conferred in frequencies humans couldn't hear without technological assistance. Assume for a moment that your information is accurate, Alex finally said. What do you propose? I propose we stop pretending this is about territorial acquisition and start treating it like what it really is: a mutual defense pact between species facing extinction. Elena stood and began pacing the spherical cell, using the variable gravity to walk on walls and ceiling, in a display that was calculated to demonstrate human adaptability. Your people are militarily superior, but strategically inflexible, she continued. You follow protocols, maintain hierarchies, and rely on technological advantages. Those are strengths when facing conventional enemies, but weaknesses when dealing with something that adapts faster than you can respond. And humans are tactically unpredictable and strategically chaotic. We adapt, improvise, and overcome through methods that don't appear in any military manual. We lie, cheat, steal, and deceive our way to victory. We turn our weaknesses into weapons and our enemies' strengths into liabilities. Elena stopped pacing and faced the aliens directly. But most importantly, we survive. Ice ages, plagues, natural disasters, wars that should have ended civilization. We keep coming back stronger. Not because we're the toughest or the smartest, but because we refuse to accept defeat. Keftal's tentacles curled in concentration. You're suggesting a symbiotic military relationship. I'm suggesting that your technology combined with our adaptability might actually have a chance against the Devourers. Separately, we're both dead. Together, we might just be awkward enough to surprise something that's conquered half the galaxy. The intelligence officer made a sound that the translator rendered as skeptical laughter. Even if we accepted this proposal, your species lacks the technological foundation to contribute meaningfully to a galactic-scale defense. Elena grinned. That's where you're wrong. See, while you've been studying our social awkwardness, we've been studying your technology. Every ship you've brought to Earth, every weapon you've deployed, every communication system you've activated, we've been recording, analyzing, and reverse engineering. She activated another hologram, this one showing detailed technical specifications for hegemony equipment. 3 days of conflict has given us more information about your capabilities than decades of observation. And unlike species that follow strict research protocols, humans are perfectly willing to jury-rig, modify, and weaponize technology in ways the original designers never intended. Impossible, Ilix protested. Those systems require decades of study to understand. For species that think in hierarchical, protocol-driven terms, yes. But humans think laterally. We see an energy weapon and ask, what else can this do? We examine a communication array and wonder, can we turn this into a weapon? We study your ship designs and think, how can we break these? Elena pulled up another display showing human modifications to captured alien equipment. In just 3 days, human engineers had found ways to boost energy weapon output by 30%, extend communication range by modifying signal processing algorithms, and create improvised explosives using alien power cells. We don't understand your technology the way you do, she admitted, but we understand it well enough to make it do things you never imagined. The 3 aliens conferred again, their communication growing more agitated. Elena could see she had shaken their fundamental assumptions about human capabilities. Staff Sergeant Vasquez, Ilix said finally, assume for the sake of argument that we were to consider this partnership. What would you propose as terms? Elena sat back down, shifting into what she recognized as her most professional demeanor. Joint command structure with equal representation. Shared technology. 8 months later, Elena stood on the observation deck of the orbital defense platform designated Terra Station Alpha, watching the final preparations for humanity's first real test as a galactic military power. The platform itself was a marvel of human-alien engineering cooperation. Hegemony technology providing the structural framework and power systems, human innovation creating weapons and tactics that no military manual had ever contemplated. The partnership had not been smooth. 3 months of negotiations, cultural exchanges, and what diplomatic records carefully termed aggressive clarification sessions had been required before both species could work together effectively. The breakthrough had come when human engineers showed hegemony scientists how to increase energy weapon efficiency by violating 17 different safety protocols, while alien technicians taught human soldiers how to properly maintain equipment instead of constantly jury-rigging temporary solutions. Sergeant Major, called Lieutenant Chen, using Elena's new rank, deep space sensors are picking up the Devourer advanced scouts. ETA 6 hours to contact. Elena nodded, checking the tactical display that showed the approaching enemy fleet. 12 ships moving in perfect formation, their technology signatures indicating capabilities that exceeded even hegemony projections. The Devourers had been refining their methods for millennia, and each encounter had made them more efficient at their primary function, consuming entire civilizations. All stations. This is Terra Command, she announced over the communication system. Condition Red is now in effect. All personnel to battle stations. Remember your training, trust your equipment, and prepare to show these bastards what happens when they pick a fight with Earth. Around the solar system, the combined human-alien defense fleet moved into position. 47 ships carrying hybrid crews and equipped with weapons that combined the best of both species' technologies. The vessels looked awkward to traditionalist eyes, bristling with modifications and innovations that violated every standard of military engineering aesthetics. Commander Ilix's voice crackled over the command frequency from his position aboard the flagship. Sergeant Major Vasquez, are your people ready for this? Sir, my people have been ready for this fight since we figured out how to throw rocks accurately. The question is whether the Devourers are ready for us. Elena moved to the tactical station where General Hayes was coordinating with alien fleet commanders. The past 8 months had aged him, but they had also given him access to technology and strategic resources that made him one of the most formidable military leaders in the galaxy. General, what's our status? All defensive positions are manned and ready. Orbital platforms have full ammunition loads and energy reserves. The asteroid belt mining stations have been converted to weapons platforms as planned. And Elena, the special project is ready for deployment. Elena smiled. The special project had been her idea, born from studying Devourer tactics and identifying their one consistent vulnerability. They expected their enemies to follow logical military doctrine. The Devourers had conquered hundreds of species by adapting faster than conventional forces could respond. But humans weren't conventional. Sir, requesting permission to address all forces, Hayes nodded, and Elena activated the fleet-wide communication system. Her voice carried to every ship, platform, and defensive position in the solar system, reaching both human and alien personnel who had spent 8 months learning to fight as one force. All units, this is Sergeant Major Vasquez. You know what's coming. You know what they've done to every other species they've encountered. You know the odds we're facing, she paused, looking out at the stars where enemy ships were, approaching at velocities that defied human understanding of physics. What the Devourers don't know is that they're not fighting just another conventional force. They're fighting humans who've had 8 months to study their tactics, aliens who've learned to think like humans, and the most aggressively modified fleet in galactic history. Across the fleet, both human and alien personnel checked their weapons and prepared for contact. The months of joint training had created something unprecedented, military units that combined alien technology with human unpredictability. Remember, Elena continued, we're not trying to defeat them in conventional combat. We're trying to be so damned awkward that they can't adapt fast enough to keep up. Use every dirty trick you've learned. Break every rule of civilized warfare. Make them regret the day they decided to pick a fight with the 2 most stubborn species in the galaxy. The first Devourer scout ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system, its sensors immediately beginning the systematic analysis that had preceded the destruction of 1,000 worlds. What it found was a defensive grid that made no sense according to established military doctrine. Instead of concentrating forces around the primary world, the defenders had scattered throughout the system. Weapon platforms occupied positions that offered no clear tactical advantage. Energy signatures suggested technologies that shouldn't exist, combinations of science that violated fundamental principles of engineering. Elena watched the scout ship's scanning pattern on her tactical display. "There," she said. "They're confused. Look at that search grid. They're trying to identify our command structure, but we're not using one." The human-alien fleet operated on principles that no sane military organization would adopt. Individual ship commanders had authority to make tactical decisions without consulting higher command. Weapons platforms could operate independently if communications were severed. Even individual crew members could override safety protocols if circumstances required it. To a species that conquered through systematic analysis and adaptation, it was chaos. "Contact," reported the sensor operator. "Devourer main fleet dropping out of hyperspace. 12 capital ships, estimated crew of..." The transmission cut off as the first Devourer energy pulse struck the outer sensor array. Elena felt the platform shake under the impact, but the hybrid human-alien construction held. "All units execute plan chaos," Elena ordered. What followed was not a battle in any conventional sense. It was a carefully orchestrated disaster that violated every principle of military science while somehow achieving its objectives. Human fighters equipped with alien energy weapons attacked in formations that changed every few seconds. Weapon platforms opened fire on targets that seemed randomly selected, then shifted to completely different tactical priorities without explanation. The main fleet split apart and reformed in patterns that served no apparent strategic purpose. The Devourers, accustomed to enemies who followed logical doctrine, found themselves facing opponents who seemed to be actively trying to confuse their own forces. Every time the alien artificial intelligence began to adapt to human tactics, the humans changed to completely different approaches. "Sergeant Major," reported Lieutenant Chen, "the Devourers are requesting communication." "They want to negotiate," Elena laughed. In 800 years of expansion, the Devourers had never requested negotiations. They conquered, consumed, and moved on. The fact that they were asking to talk meant they had encountered something completely outside their experience. "Put them through." The holographic display activated, showing a being that defied easy description. The Devourer appeared to be constructed of dark energy held in semi-stable patterns, with features that shifted constantly as it spoke. "Unknown species," it said. "Your tactics are inefficient. Your forces appear to be operating without coordination. We do not understand your strategic objectives." Elena stepped forward, making sure her image was transmitted clearly. "That's the point. You can't adapt to tactics that don't make sense in the first place." "Clarify. We're not trying to win according to your definition of victory. We're trying to be so awkward that fighting us costs more than it's worth. Every ship you destroy will explode in a way that damages your forces. Every position you capture will turn out to be booby-trapped. Every victory will feel like a defeat." The Devourer's form fluctuated in what might have been confusion. "This is not optimal warfare." "No," Elena agreed. "It's human warfare. We don't fight to win cleanly. We fight to make the other guy regret starting the fight in the first place." She activated the special project. Throughout the solar system, the asteroid mining platforms revealed their true purpose. Not weapons, but manufacturing facilities that had spent 8 months producing millions of self-replicating combat drones. Each drone was equipped with basic alien technology and human programming that gave it one simple directive: attach to enemy ships and cause as much damage as possible before being destroyed. The drones swarmed the Devourer fleet like angry insects, too small to target effectively but numerous enough to overwhelm point defense systems. They didn't destroy the enemy ships, but they made every system malfunction, every weapon misfire, and every sensor give contradictory readings. "Unknown species," the Devourer communication continued. "This level of resource expenditure is unsustainable. You cannot maintain this chaos indefinitely." Elena smiled. "Watch us." For the first time in galactic history, a Devourer fleet retreated. Not because they had been defeated, but because they had encountered an enemy so awkward, so chaotic, and so utterly unpredictable that conquest would